All right, well, let's get another question here. This one sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from one of the legends out there, John Fell in Baltimore.
Going back to the OG.
That's right, and he also mentions it's Lee Petrie's birthday, so happy birthday, Lee Petrie, 50 years old.
50?
50.
Good Lord. I thought he was a lot older than that. He's led a hard life.
Well, let's see how hard this question is, Jim. This was sent by, once again, John Fell in Baltimore. I was wondering what would have happened to the careers of Jim, Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, and Ricky Gibson had Ricky Gibson not gotten hurt in the car accident. Would Jerry Jarrett have chosen a different partner for Morton and still formed the Rock and Roll Express? Who could that partner have been? Would Watts have taken the Gibson brothers along with you, Bobby, and Dennis? Would you have had the same success against the Gibsons? What do you think?
Lots of what's there. Now, here, there's only one thing. Ricky Gibson, the car accident that he had is what put him out of wrestling, but his career as an active wrestler did not end until after the Rock and Roll Express was formed.
Right, because he was actually in Mid-South in 85 after you guys had already left.
Right, and he was in Crockett in 86. Remember Ricky Lee Jones? Poor thing, we'll get to that
that's
in a second.
right. I forgot about that, yeah.
And as well, Ricky Gibson also wrestled in the early 80s in, I think was it Southeastern or Continental, which had the Alabama territory. They did split up and go their separate ways on occasion. They'd be booked in different, because Robert Gibson spent a lot of time in 1978 in the Tennessee territory, teaming, working for Nick Goulas, teaming with other people, while Ricky was somewhere else. Ricky may have been a single in Knoxville at that point. So anyway, let's start back at the beginning. Ricky Gibson was Robert Gibson's older brother. They were half brothers, actually, but Ricky got into business first. I think he started in 1972. When he was like 19 years old, maybe 18. He was phenomenal. By the time that they used him first in Tennessee in the main events in Memphis in 74, he was only in his early 20s, and he was the best in-ring young babyface worker, I think, anywhere in the business. Now, with hindsight, back then we couldn't see everywhere. But now in hindsight that I've seen film or most people that were around live at that point in time, Ricky Gibson as a white meat young baby face was the best in the business. He was so athletic. He was the first guy to do the missile drop kick before they named it that off the top rope. You know, when he was chasing the managers, he'd do the spots where he would run across the ring and jump over the top rope and land on his feet and key at a dead run. It's just amazing athleticism. The big high backdrops, where you've never seen a guy go up that high or turn so violently in the air and land so flat like a board that it looked like it was going to break the ring. The way he sold. So he was really a really exciting young babyface, and they brought him into Memphis at the perfect time. Lawler, Jarrett had just decided that he was going to give Lawler the big singles push. And Lawler had just turned on Jackie Fargo and hospitalized Fargo in Memphis. And they brought Ricky Gibson in to be Lawler's challenger for the Southern Junior Heavyweight title, which later became the Southern Heavyweight title. Well, business was so hot because Lawler and Fargo's first go-round had been drawing, and then Fargo gets hurt and put out. Ricky Gibson comes in to challenge Lawler. Then they used that program as the catalyst when Fargo was ready to come back. Fargo was then in Ricky Gibson's corner, then refereed first, I think. Point is, Ricky Gibson in his early 20s, because he was plugged into that angle, got credit for like 5 full sellouts of the Memphis Mid-South Coliseum that year with him in a main event, which was 11,000 people. And it was, fucking great for a guy in that position. And that made him in the Tennessee territory from then on. So then in 1976, they bring him back. He's in a tag team with his younger brother, Robert, who had just turned 18 at August of 75. So Really, he was still 18 years old, just about to turn 19. And I got to be honest, when we first saw that team, you could tell, okay, this is Ricky Gibson, the big star, and this is his younger brother that is greener than a pepper tree, right? And that run didn't go too well, although the fans liked him because it was the Gibsons. But Robert, he was green. But by the time that they worked a little while longer there, then they went up to Nova Scotia, worked the summer deal in the Maritimes for Al Zink, and they got a little bit more experience. And then Robert spent some time in the Tennessee territory, as I said, by himself while Ricky was doing other shit. By the time they put them back together as a team in 1979, now Robert has come along, and now I would say they were in Tennessee during the period of time Lawler was out with a broken leg, and then some part of time when he came back. But I would say the 1979 through 1981 era Ricky and Robert Gibson team was the most exciting young babyface team in the business.
Although brief, because of various reasons, including, money, they weren't in L.A. long. But Dan Farron, the late Dan Farron, told me that he saw them out there and they were spectacular, the Gibson brothers.
Yeah, especially for that time period in Los Angeles, they would have been, my God, Stevens and Patterson next to the competition, and they were really good. Even in Tennessee, we'd seen all kinds of tag teams, baby faces, heels, everything. But the Gibsons were good, and the people got into them. And that period of time, they were an excellent tag team in the matches with Wayne Ferris and Larry Latham, the Blonde Bombers. And, those, especially remember they did the second version of the Tupelo concession stand brawl in between the original and the one with Gilbert and Morton and Fucci and Onita. And I don't honestly remember. Now, it's not to say the car wreck ended Ricky's career, but the point is he had other injuries before that, because that style that he worked had taken its toll. He had knee problems. He had a back. I can't believe he could walk, much less not have back problems with the backdrops that he took in those Tennessee rings too. And there was periods where he wasn't wrestling and Robert was out on his own with someone else. And
how old was he in 94? Because when I saw him, he must have been older than younger than I thought. He had a cane. He had gray hair.
Yeah. That's another thing. Ricky Gibson, I'm going to say, hold on. I can almost do the math. I'm 52. When you saw him at the Night of Legends, Ricky Gibson was like 41 years old.
Wow.
He turned prematurely gray. He had the injuries that, as a matter of fact, you'll see in 1986 with the Crockett tapes, Ricky Lee Jones, his midsection was big because he had gained weight. He wasn't a greyhound anymore. He'd only been working at that time for less than 15 years. But whereas in the mid 70s, he was sleek and a greyhound and these leaps and all this athletic activity. He was always a great worker. But by the 80s, that's what he was getting by on, was working, because he had a bunch of injuries and the gray hair and just everything combined to make him look older than his age. And then the car wreck happened. And the reason he was walking with a cane, he was at Night of Legends. He was in the Rock and Roll Express's corner, handcuffed to Tammy Fitch. His leg was bent by that wreck around. Not only did he have a hole in his leg, right, I think it was right below the knee. He had a hole that went almost halfway through his fucking leg, but also the leg was not straight anymore. It wouldn't straighten out, nor would his foot point straight toward the front. So he looked old. But that was the thing. It was just, he worked a really hard style, but it took its toll on him. But when he was right, he was brilliant. And the only weak point in his game, won't surprise you, being a Gibson brother, he wasn't a strong promo. If he was really mad, he could fire up for a brief period of time and the people would roar and you'd believe it. But he had a hoarse voice anyway. And he wasn't a real well-spoken promo when he didn't have something to be mad about. But they back then in the, baby faces, you didn't really need to be, as long as the heel was, and you could just be put upon and register indignation. But yeah, that's so. To answer John's question, now that I've gone through all of that, it wouldn't have been a matter of taking the Gibson brothers to Louisiana, because Ricky Morton had just come back to Tennessee from San Antonio. He'd been teaming with Ken Lucas.
Yeah.
In the Southwest Territory, and he had just come back because, Memphis was the home territory for him. Robert, I'm trying to think, he had been there for a little while at that point, but was a single, possibly. He hadn't been just teaming with Ricky Gibson anywhere. And as we've told the story, they needed a team to be the B team, teeny bopper, rock and roll kind of team underneath the Fabulous Ones, because the territory was doing such business. And also because Lawler was the booker and he couldn't say no to anybody, he'd just starve you out and then say, oh shit, I'm sorry, you can't stay. They had so many guys in the territory, they were running 2 towns every night. So they put Ricky and Robert together to go to the spot shows as the Rock and Roll Express to draw the girls that wanted to see the Fabs, because the Fabs couldn't be in 2 places at the same time. They could just be in the parking lot in the back of Stan's van minutes before they were in the ring in whatever building they were in.
One of the things that always surprised me about the early days of the rock and roll was the success in Houston. I mean, they had success everywhere across the territory, but in that one specific town, Ricky Morton had just been there with Ken Lucas. And he even main evented against Bockwinkel for the AWA title.
Yeah.
What, in 83, right? Or 80,
yeah.
Was it 82 or 83? I don't remember.
Within a calendar year of them showing up as the Rock and Roll Express, probably.
So that's what always surprised me, was that they got over so strong in Houston, even though he wasn't fresh.
But you know what? Here's the thing. Maybe the 3,000 people that were going to the Sam Houston Coliseum for the Friday night matches during part of that San Antonio talent run were sitting there going, that Ricky, he sure has improved, but the 7,000 other people that weren't coming at all during that run that were there now were drowning them out, going, yeah, the Rock and Roll Express. It was a different, the business blew up, and it was a different audience. And yes, some people, but it wasn't like Ricky Morton was a different human being. He was Ricky Morton. He'd been used in that period of time as a top tag team with Ken Lucas.
And then he got MTV.
And then they all got MTV. But, Morton and Lucas were not. Ken Lucas, Ricky credited for teaching him a lot about working and about the business. Ken Lucas was a veteran, but they were not as cosmetically pleasing nor as exciting as the Rock and Roll Express. That was just a perfect combination. But like you said, Ricky had matches with Bockwinkel for the AWA title when they recognized that down there. It's not like he'd been used in the first match and then he comes in the Rock and Roll Express and their main event guys. It's just he had a new partner, had a little bit more hair and MTV, and and he's dressing like David Lee Roth. And they said, yes, please, may we have some more. And that in Houston especially, that was, I would say, Houston, Oklahoma City, and goddamn, they loved those guys in Little Rock, Arkansas too. But in Houston, they actually held candlelight vigils all summer for the Rock and Roll Express to come back. We beat them for the Mid-South Tag Team title in a match where the losing team had to leave Mid-South for 90 days, right? Because the deal that Watts had made with Jarrett was all those guys came down there. Well, the Rock and Roll gets over so good, Jarrett needs somebody for the summer, some babyface team. So Dundee agrees to send the Rock and Roll back to Memphis for 3 months in the summer, because the summer's the best time in the Tennessee territory. And Watts agreed to that because he got 2 runs of the Rock and Roll Midnight. We ran a couple-month program, and we beat them and ran them off. And then we beat all the other teams they put in front of us until the Rock and Roll's 90 days was up and they could come back. Then we ran for 3 more months. They beat us and we left. But in Houston, the girls would come with signs they had made and banners and pennants. They even took pictures of this, and I think they even put it on one of the Mid-South TV shows. They would line with tape the hallway wall that led to the babyface locker room door with signs, "Come back, rock and roll." And they'd have the number of days, like they did for Goldberg's fucking win streak. They would have the number of days, either 44 down, 46 to go, or however they phrased it, and nothing but banners and pennants, and they would leave the what's the word I'm searching for? The bandanas that the rock and roll tied on them. And they'd leave bandanas out in front of the door like it was a goddamn vigil for the death of John Lennon. And finally, the first night they were back in Houston, all the girls brought all the display and set it up again, and they had the rock and roll come out and take the picture with all the fans in front of the display and everything. Long time gone, the Rock and Roll Express are back. And I mean, what kind of fucking, the fans are doing their own promotion. They love those guys so much. Nobody, no other wrestlers on the card or anywhere else were getting that kind of fucking treatment from those people.
In 84, how horrified were you when you saw that they had grown mustaches?
That was a dark day, a very dark day. 'Cause it made them look older and less babyface, but they got rid of them fairly quick. So that, but it was on MTV. I think didn't David Lee Roth grow a mustache at one point?
Oh, I don't remember that.
Possibly somebody on MTV grew a mustache. So that's what happened there. But so the point is, to John's question, they wouldn't have brought the Gibson brothers to Mid-South, although they wouldn't have gotten over as good as the Rock and Roll Express if they did. But if they had brought Ricky and Robert Gibson from 1979, 1980, 1981 into Mid-South wrestling at almost any time period, they would have been possibly the most popular team, babyface team, except for the Rock and Roll Express. They were just so good.
If Ricky and Robert Gibson were still teaming up and Lawler wanted to form another team for those towns that you didn't get the fabulous ones, and he has Ricky Morton, is there anyone else you could see on the 83 Memphis roster that would have fit in?
Oh, God. I don't have the 83 Memphis
Bobby's
babyface roster in front of me.
You're lucky it didn't happen to Bobby Eaton, because he turned babyface in 83. It very easily could have been him.
Well, that's the thing. But Ricky Morton, I mean, at that time, thankfully, I think Bobby Fulton was somewhere else at that point, because poor Bobby Fulton may have been, and then that would have screwed the Fantastics too. Can you imagine Ricky Morton and Bobby Fulton, and then Robert Gibson and Tommy Rogers? None of that would have worked. See, that's the point. You've got to have the right combination. You've got to have the right recipe of food ingredients, or the right formula of chemical composition. Sometimes the cake doesn't rise if you don't put all the ingredients in right. And you see, I mean, it was happenstance, but it all worked out when you think about it. And honestly, it was best that I didn't get the fabulous. I was supposed to be the Fabulous One's manager when they first got put together as a team. Jarrett was going to switch them heel, and that's why he made me a manager. But then he didn't, because they got over like God as baby faces. But that would have forever probably banned the Midnight Express from ever becoming a thing, with me at least, possibly ever. Because I wasn't ready for that spot at that time. And then later on, I got Stan when I wanted Tom Pritchard. But it might have turned out best that I got Stan when I got Stan, and then later on I got Tom when I got Tom when I needed Tom. And it didn't prevent the Fantastics from being a tag team.
Talking about this period of time, we're talking about all these different what-ifs. I have to think, what if you had gotten more sleep?
Well, I guarantee you that's one thing that we did not get in Mid-South Wrestling, was a lot of sleep. However, I'm glad, looking back on it, that I did not have the Helix sleep mattress back then, because if I hadn't been able to sleep on my Helix sleep mattress every night, I would have been really cranky. And maybe we would have got one and put it in the trunk of a car like the mighty Igor did. Nevertheless, folks, if you want to have a great night's sleep, that's all you need is a Helix mattress. You don't need drugs. Don't need sleep aids. You don't need to watch modern wrestling and bore yourself to death. You just need a fine quality surface to lay your tired old bones and your sleepy little head down on. And that's what the folks at Helix Mattress will give you. We've talked about them. You just go on to the website, helixsleep.com. That's Helix, helixsleep.com. And you take the quiz. It takes about 2 minutes to complete. And it matches your body type and sleep preference to the perfect mattress for you. Why would you buy a mattress made for someone else? Why would you buy a mattress that someone else has used? You don't know what kind of DNA they've dribbled all over it. Possibly they're incontinent or they have premature ejaculation issues. Always get a brand new mattress and a mattress made just for you. Everybody's unique. That's why they've got different models to choose from: soft, medium, and firm, cool down mattresses. They've even got a mattress great for spinal alignment. I already got my Helix Sleep before I knew about this, but the next one I get, the one for spinal alignment to prevent morning aches and pains. Anyway, you take the quiz. It takes 2 minutes. They match you up with something that you will like, and it's shipped directly to your door for free. You don't have to go to a store. You don't have to have 6 or 8 shady-looking individuals coming into your home, tracking dirt and who knows what all over the place just to get the thing in there and get it lugged up the stairs. You just bring it up in the box, open it up, and watch it inflate to life. They've got a 10-year warranty. You get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free. They'll even pick it up for you if you don't love it. They've got financing options, flexible payment plans. You've never seen people this flexible. They'll bend over backwards for you, stick their own head up their ass, and kiss it goodbye. And right now, Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/JCE. That's right. Go to helixsleep.com/JCE and you can get up to $200 off and or 2 free pillows, depending on what you're doing there. So do that right now. This isn't any of that My Pillow horse shit where they just put some pencil shavings in a sheet and call it a pillow or a mattress. This is the quality stuff, folks. helixsleep.com/JCE.